thank you for joining us this morning for another segment of Java Chat with Filmensen and Friends. I'm Marco Cordova from Monarch Private Capital, along with Ryan Broussard, David Brower, Deidre Owens, Nicole Amlin, and Marge Gallus as our expert panelists. So just wanted to mention that we talked earlier, if you haven't seen our other segments, about the Western states and hot topics. This segment will discuss central states. And I think the first state we'll discuss is Louisiana. Ryan's actually from Louisiana and he's filming there right now. Ryan, is there why is it dark there?
There's a storm going on right now and I lost power, but I'm very dedicated to incentives and this panel. So I'm here under spotlight to enlighten your audience. Yeah, so Louisiana, it's Louisiana is one of the first ones that were around. Them and New Mexico are pretty close in terms of the first in the US. The first was Canada of runaway production from California, and then domestically it was really Louisiana and then New Mexico. And it's gone through quite a few changes. There was a while where it had, big ticket shows like Jurassic World and Terminators and Planet of the Apes and all that stuff. And then it kind of had a dip. They changed it and, it made those people not come back. And then they've changed it again back in 2017. And it's been really, really great. It's very busy right now. It's the busiest I've seen it since those golden years, but more along the lines with television shows, studio television shows, and larger independents and smaller independents. We're very busy in Louisiana. I think between cast and crew and media services right now, we have probably close to 15 projects in Louisiana, if you include some animated stuff we're doing as well. And it's really crazy. So, I mean, it's a great program. It's partially refundable, which is interesting. There's only one other state that has partially refundable as an option, and that's Massachusetts. But Massachusetts gives you the choice to either the state will buy it back at the partial return. So we talked about New Mexico in another panel. Well, they'll give you dollar for dollar back with the tax credit after they offset your liability. In Louisiana, they give you a discount of it. So in Louisiana, it's 90 cents on the dollar, but you have to pay a 2% fee to access that. So we always tell people, Deidre as well, especially when financing and looking over these budgets, to make sure that 2% is in there, because you have to pay that 2% to access getting the money back in Louisiana. But they give you a high return, 40% on residents, 25 on non-residents, 25 on spend, and it can get higher. There's a lot of bonuses that you can build on to get a pretty high amount in Louisiana. So it's very busy right now, and big crew base too, very, very deep. So it's a great program. Besides the storms, I mean, if there were, you just gotta plan for the storms. Whenever this happens, and I'll talk to productions that might have gone down or something in a storm. I remember there was a time when Florida, when they had their program, God rest its soul, was trying to come back. They had a hurricane bonus. If you filmed during hurricane season, you would get a bonus there. And I always push Louisiana and other states involved, Puerto Rico and those types of areas. They should bring that back, because I thought that was kind of smart. But it's a really good incentive, and it's part of Hollywood South for sure. Mm-hmm. Do you guys get? Nicole, are you seeing a lot of Louisiana stuff on your side?
Yeah, I do see a lot of Louisiana shows on my end for sure. I think there was, I'm getting a lot of shows that are actually problem shows though in Louisiana, whereas it's I don't know if it's, something I attract, but some of those shows are just, difficult to work on now. They're having to go back there, they shut down, they came back, and it's like, I've got 4 different GLs. One's in Excel and the other one is in something else. So it's been QuickBooks. I have one show in QuickBooks. So some of the bigger shows again are, they left frankly because of the ATL cap.
Right.
That's why Louisiana doesn't see the larger shows anymore, is that reason. And when you can go to another jurisdiction and, you know, have the above the line qualify. So I get some of those smaller shows for sure.
And
I like the state,
clarify
I
that,
like the film office. So I have a good time in doing Louisiana shows generally.
yeah, and to clarify the above one cap, because it's a unique one, right? I don't think any other state, well, there might be another state that has an aggregate above line cap actually, but theirs is an aggregate percentage instead of an amount of 40% of your Louisiana spend. It can't be your above the line expenditures. And that was because they were getting a lot of those independents where they had one, you know, it was a $5 million show, but 4 million of it was going towards, you know, a named talent. So it was really
$400 million shows where they're, you know, it's 40 million of, you know, salaries that isn't staying in the state. So
right. And Deidre, I know, sees this in other states, and it kind of drives her crazy. When you actually see states that don't have that cap, sometimes that can be you know, interesting. I mean, from us, from a payroll perspective, we say, oh, we're getting a $6 million show, and you get the payroll, and you're like, wait a second, the below the line is 600,000 on this $6 million show. What is going on here? So Louisiana, that's the reason they implemented that cap.
Right.
No. Anybody else? I mean, Marco, that was an area you used to, you know, be able to transfer in. And I still get a lot of questions where people think you can transfer in it. I guess because it used to be transferable, but you can't anymore. So do you have people coming to you saying, you know, I thought I could transfer in Louisiana, and then you say, no, well, Georgia's still transferable, and, you know, Illinois, which is, we'll talk about, you know, soon, that's transferable.
Well,
when they're looking to do that.
Well, Louisiana actually has some, I'm not sure if there's any more grandfathered credits under the old rules, but they did make some exceptions and had some grandfathered credits. I believe the last one I saw was last year in 2020, where they allowed a major studio to transfer the credit. They got approval for the initial certification in 2017. So that
Right.
allowed them to be grandfathered, but it's not something you're going to see unless someone, you know, mostly a major studio holding on to an older credit.
Yeah.
So all the
Partially
credits,
refundable, like I said, it's pretty unique. They're the only state that has only partially refundable. Massachusetts, as I mentioned earlier, they have partially refundable or transferable. So they're the only state that has that. So it's just something you have to budget appropriately for. And to Nicole's point with, you know, oh, I see, you know, missteps and stuff. There's some unique caveats there. Sales tax doesn't qualify. SUI doesn't qualify. Airfare doesn't qualify. You need, right, sales tax. You need the you need L4s for everybody working there to qualify. Residency forms. All things that we talked about in another panel, like David was saying, everything's going digital. That need to be scanned in and digital with regards to your start paperwork. So
yeah,
put your money towards your accountants.
And I wanted to mention also something too. This caused a bit of panic, but I got some clarification last year. They decided not to extend the program. You know, their sunset is in July, I believe, of 2025. But you know, they're still accepting applications through July 2025. So anyone that wants to submit an application, you know, as long as there's enough funds, and you could actually check in the Department of Revenue Services website how much funds are available. There's 180 million per year. You know, I encourage everyone to look at the website and contact the film office to make sure there's enough money. But you know, they're still accepting applications just in case some folks were turned off with them not extending the sunset. And that could all change next year too. Yeah, next year.
They'll revisit it. So
yeah, there's still money even after the sunset, is your point, Avery, is that you can apply and there's still money left. It's not that the money runs out, it's that the application date is.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point to add to about Louisiana. I know there are some interesting crew-based development programs that are going on in the state, different townships there. Some of the other states in the US have interesting programs, particularly film friendly, where a lot of the regional cities and offices around are being trained in film production. So there's some interesting developments just that are worth keeping in mind when you're thinking about bringing a project to places like those.
Yeah, they have a vocation requirement that goes along with their, David mentioned in a previous panel about how California has a fee with their application process that goes towards training and also diversity. And Louisiana has the vocation requirement, which basically says that they want either an in-kind donation or set visits or trainings or just a straight up donation. In order to qualify, you need to do that with like a nonprofit or a school that's been vetted by the film office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In particular, New Mexico has that as well.
Mhm.
You have
with
to-
the
you
interns.
have to pay them
And
cash.
Hawaii.
And Hawaii, yep.
Yeah, those are great programs. Those are things like
Yeah.
when you talk to programs that are newer, I'm sure we'll talk about Kentucky and a few others, and I think Oklahoma. And that's a suggestion I always say to those newer programs is try to implement that in your program in some way, the guidelines, the rules, whatever, where there needs to be some sort of training aspect to it, whether it's you hire a certain amount of interns or a donation to a school, or even where you can bump people up. I'm trying to think of what state that was, but they had it to where if you bumped somebody up from like a second to a first, there was like a bonus on that. So there's some little interesting things and tidbits there with those types of training programs connected to incentives.
Great. So just wanted to move along some other jurisdictions in central states. Another popular jurisdiction that's been around for a long time also is Illinois. I know, David, we're working on a couple large projects in Illinois. Can you give us some tidbits or any useful information on how the audit process is? And, does it take a long time to get the money, or, is there a lot of crew that you're seeing? Any information that you could share with us?
I will say on the audit side, it's pretty intense. It's a deep dive. You have to look at 100% of all the expenditures that qualify in Illinois. It's usually residents and the vendor spend there, and we have to go through every single receipt. So
Oh, wow.
we do prefer it to be organized as such. It definitely takes a while, and the state will go through all of the information in detail as well. So as far as timing, it's a little bit longer than you would see in some other states, but it is, as you said, a good program, and they do have a lot going on there. If you watch any NBC shows, I'm sure you see Chicago in almost every title.
Almost everyone.
Ours,
there's Chicago block.
But from our standpoint, the biggest thing is talking with us up front to see what will qualify and what doesn't, and also the nature of how the information should be presented, because it does. We are working on another big show where it's not scanned, even in this post-COVID world, and they have decided to send us all the boxes to go through.
Wow.
So we'll be receiving 60 plus boxes here in a little bit.
Nice.
There it goes. Illinois was one of probably the first state to actually have something. David mentioned in the last panel about the diversity requirement in California. Illinois was the very first, I believe, to have a requirement for diversity, where they want you to have a diversity plan. They were way ahead of the game, because I think this is going to be a trend we see in a lot of other states, and will be in some of the states we talk about in another panel. And so that is something like, from a start paperwork perspective of payroll, and me watching our clients with incentives, I always say, hey, make sure to add this diversity form to your start paperwork. This is something they take very seriously, and they always have. So it's just something to be aware of, that they really want you to put your best foot forward in terms of getting a diverse crew and cast.
Great. So as far as other jurisdictions in the central region, talking about a new program, there's Tennessee. They had a grant program, and they recently changed it to a tax credit. It's not something you could sell, but it's something that the production company or an affiliated company can use. Has any of you worked on Tennessee credits?
We've worked on a few.
You have a few?
We've worked on a few. Yep.
Yeah, I haven't done
under the old program, under the
Okay.
grant program.
under the other.
Well,
Right.
Isn't the grant I thought was still active, and the other program was running alongside of it.
Yeah, the other program though, it's a lot more lucrative. It's 40
Right.
to 50%
It's
of the
huge.
payroll expenses. The one thing I looked at the rules and legislation for that program, it's still kind of unclear on
Very.
some of the rules, just because they have a requirement that it's not transferable. But most of these independent production companies going to a state like Tennessee, they're not going to be able to use the credit.
I
So I
assume
think
it's not refundable as either.
yeah, it's not refundables, but
It's
what
not
they're
refundable.
allowing, yeah, it's
Yeah.
what they're allowing, and what I'm hearing is that you could have a co-applicant that's not actually the production company.
Mhm.
So it could be maybe the distributor of the project, could be the co-applicant, and that co-applicant can then file a return. And I think there's an option to file a combined Tennessee return, which is also a lot of complexities with that. So I think right now there's still some kinks with the
Yeah.
program, and just trying to flush out some of the language in their legislation, and maybe have some additional guidelines and rules. But definitely look out for Tennessee. 40% for payroll that's spent in the state for services as well, and then up to 50% of the qualified payroll expenses, depending on where you're located in Tennessee. Some more distressed type areas. So that's something I think that people will look out for. Just be careful with the rules right now. Some people like waiting for a studio being a guinea pig. So usually what we'll see is a large studio being a guinea pig, and then kind of everyone else, piggybacks off that. So I think in the next year or so, you'll see, one or two studios try out Tennessee, and we'll go from there.
They're so hungry for a TV show. So that's what they really, when they had Nashville there, and with the grant, they got 13 million, I think, a year. Nashville, I think, took 11 of it. They want that again. I mean, the television shows are the belle of the ball. They'll even open up. I don't think they qualify non-residents, but they will qualify non-residents if you're a television show. So
And
they certainly
all
want
the
TV.
all the projects we've done there have been television shows.
Yeah.
Right. I also want to bring up just historically in Tennessee, which might make more sense to everyone about how it used to be done there, is that the original incentive program was actually for Tennessee producers. And so what you'd actually have to do is not just have a co-applicant, but you needed to put a limited liability company together with a producer, and the producer would use the credit. And so they seem to have taken out the legal structuring of Tennessee in order to obtain a Tennessee credit into a much easier way. So as much as you think it looks more complicated, it actually is not as complicated as it used to be. But that's where their law started, and how they're trying to transition it into a co-applicant instead of literally somebody who owns stock in the same company that was receiving it. And so it's how you access it now that has changed, but it was always the producer in Tennessee's credit that would earn the credit that a studio would have to kind of team up with, and then they'd receive the credit, and that's how it gets used. So that makes a little more sense. I think that that's where they're coming from, and actually it's a little easier than it used to be.
Oh, wow. So I guess the older program, much tougher.
The older program was you had to
Yeah.
get lawyers involved, companies involved, and find a producer that would join with you, and then you'd flow the money in to produce in Tennessee. The producer would take the credit, use the credit, and hand you back cash.
Okay, and then finally, real quick, we've seen it come and gone, but now it's back again. We have Kentucky that shut down in 2018. There were complaints that they were giving out too much money. The governor then shut down the program, and now it's revived again in 2021. Have any of you guys seen any Kentucky projects pop up?
No, I think unfortunately the pandemic started sort of right when maybe Kentucky was starting to promote it and come at it, and then all of a sudden the industry shut down. So I feel like we might see it now, but I haven't seen any come. I mean, I've had people talk about it, but not any from me.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
getting a lot of budgets. I'm getting a lot of budgets where they're
Yeah.
saying, oh, we're thinking of Kentucky and we're going
There's
through that. And I've been working with the film commissioner there just to go over, because it looks like they may have changed some things on what fringes qualify and whatnot. So, and what's interesting is they killed the program, but they didn't really kill the program when they did it, because they just changed it to a non-refundable, non-transferable credit, which is what, California is for the big studios, but nobody has that much income tax liability and, liability in Kentucky to offset. So it was dead in the water. And now that it's fully refundable, it's definitely back on the map again, and something that people can look to. I think we will see more stuff go there for sure, especially because Ohio, they run out of money so quickly, because that's such a fantastic program, and there's a lot of fallout from it, because when they open their gates for applications, it's pretty much all out.
It's already done. It's gone.
done.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see a lot of people that may have considered Ohio switch to Kentucky. That's what I think.
Conclude this on the central states. We're going to talk soon about the eastern states. Thank you for joining us.